What person, if you could have dinner with any person you want in the whole world, people pick like Einstein and Gandhi, what president or something like that. I would probably choose Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Like, it would just be a wild conversation. If somebody mentions wrestling and they want to talk, ooh, baby, let's talk. Welcome to episode 3 of whatever we're doing here. Maybe Modern Mythology. I'm still playing around with it. How you guys doing? Welcome. I think we're rolling, ready to go. Yeah, man, episode 3, here we are again. I guess we're still doing this. The powers that be are like, you can keep going, which is super cool because Lord knows I have, like I said, a lot to say. And hopefully it's somewhat interesting. It's probably not. Anyways, just kidding. So today we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and I did a different thing. I have the card I wrote over there instead of over there, so I won't be reaching for it like a fool. I can just kind of glance over like a professional, right? That's what a professional would do. They have the cue cards, the cue card guy, right? Wally from Seth Meyers. I love that guy. Any hoozle. So I was just wanted to talk about how dark that last podcast I did was, man. I left doing episode 2 and I was like, man, that was really like a downer of an episode. So I was going to start this episode all high and on a high note and everything. But then there's like war with Ukraine. I'm having a colitis flare up. My kids are terrible. The world is just falling apart. So this is going to be another horribly dark episode. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to try to bring some levity to this world, right? But one topic I was talking about last week, which I thought is interesting because obviously it's still in the going on right now, is the Batman, right? I was talking about Spider-Man versus the Batman and just how I was interested to see how this like battle of myth is going to take place, right, in our culture. And this week, AMC announced that they're going to they've been talking about having a tiered ticket price system for a while. I think obviously since COVID, they want to make their money. And so what they're going to do is Batman tickets are going to be priced higher than regular tickets, right? Which is interesting. And I'm sure there's somebody out there with much better knowledge than me and some like real like facts as to why they're doing it. But can I get a little conspiratorial with you guys right now? Because that's like what it's about in this world, right? It's very interesting to me that they're going to choose potentially the next biggest superhero movie after Spider-Man to start this with, right? Like, they could have started it with Spider-Man and maybe tried then, but they decided to do it with the Batman, So this leads me to believe that it will be very difficult for Batman to approach the levels of Spider-Man, because how many people are going to go, well, I don't want to pay more to see Batman? Like, there will be many people who hear that and are like, well, I'm not going to go see it. Like, why are they charging me more for this movie, right? So, in my conspiratorial brain, I wonder if Disney put the screws on AMC and are trying to do a little, wheelin' dealin' type thing. Hey, we don't want Batman to get too big, right? We want him to stay at this level. We don't want him to break any box office records. We don't want it to get any sort of traction, right? We don't want Warner Brothers and the DC universe to get any sort of, new lifeblood, right? Because as I've said before, I'm not really excited for this movie. Somebody made a great post and it was very funny, and it was about how in 1988 we got a new, darker, grittier Batman movie. And then in 2000, whatever it was, the Batman Begins came out. We got a new, grittier, darker Batman movie. And now in 2022, we're getting a new, darker, grittier Batman movie. And I was just like, that's exactly my fucking feelings, right? Like, that is exactly the way I'm feeling. It's like, we're going, it's like, oh, Batman getting dark again. It's like, we've seen this before, guys. This is not necessarily new territory, right? We've seen this darker, grittier Batman, And now we're going to do it again, right? Because that's what people want. Even though I think Marvel is showing us that people want superheroes as more of an antidote to the darkness in their life, not necessarily more darkness. Though everything has its place. The reviews that I'm hearing are that it's a beautiful movie, right? Like, it is literally like looking at a graphic novel, that Matt Reeves directed the hell out of this movie, that it is just like a sight for your eyes, and it's really good. And even people are saying that Robert Pattinson is a great Batman, which I said it earlier, I did think that Ben Affleck was going to suck, right? I really thought he was going to be a turd of a Batman, but he had a different take on it. He was a big, gritty, like, when he had that big fight scene in Batman vs. Superman, oh man, you felt it, dude. You felt like, wow, that's Batman beating the tar out of these guys. And it had the moves and everything. So I was wrong, right? I can admit when I'm wrong. Not really. But I thought, he blew me away. And then I was excited for his solo Batman movie and all this shit. And of course it fell apart because that's what happens sometimes in life. So now we have this new Batman movie with Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson, and we're going to see where it goes, But I definitely am concerned about AMC and their price fixing with tickets and stuff like that. And I wonder, we got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness coming out in May, and I wonder if they're going to do it for that, or they're like, you know what, it didn't work with Batman, so we don't think it's the right time to do it for Doctor Strange. And then I'm going to sit back in this chair and go, really? Because, like, that's just, interesting, don't you think? Again, just conspiracies. I don't have any proof or any sort of, knowledge other than Disney is a totally monstrous company that makes beautiful content. As you can see, I'm wearing my Boba Fett sweatshirt, right? You can like a thing and know it's evil, right? Hopefully, you can like a thing and know that it's not always the best, right? You know what I mean? Like, you do a lot of mental gymnastics. There's some mental gymnastics, which I feel like in this society, everyone's way good at, everyone's super good at that, okay for me, but not for thee kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we're really good at it. So even though Disney is a horrible corporate overlord, I still really like Boba Fett, which actually brings me to another topic I want to talk about. More Disney, more bullshit. Boba Fett, right? I'm wearing a Boba Fett sweatshirt. I got this for Christmas. I love this sweatshirt, right? Randy got it for me because she knows I'm the biggest Boba Fett fan. I've been a Fett fan since middle school or something like that. Well, earlier than that, when I saw the Star Wars movies. Everyone who saw the original Star Wars movies, Empire Strikes Back, was like, who's that cool guy in the helmet, right? Everybody loves Boba Fett. And he had like 7 minutes of screen time in the entire 2 movies he's in. But I still haven't seen the new show. And it's like, I don't know. I can't get over that I haven't seen the new Boba Fett show. I keep thinking to myself, oh, I'll watch it. I'll get to it, But there is just so much content right now in the world. Like, just of whatever you like, whatever your flavor is, there is thousands of hours of well, hopefully. I don't know. There's some sickos out there, and maybe we don't have enough. But even like horror movies and slasher movies, we're getting some of the darkest horror movies ever. You know what I mean? So even if your palate is that torture porn shit, we got a flavor for you, man. And it's just, there's so much. It's like hard to like get on top of everything. You know what I mean? And then it's even more because it feels like you have a window of opportunity, right? There's a small window for you to get on the pulse and the hype and that hype train. Choo-choo, you want to get on that Boba Fett hype train. Well, if the show's over, you missed it, right? It's like, oh, it's over. It's also, they do a different model than Netflix, right? Then Netflix gives it all to you to binge, right? And then people have talked about this, the idea of binging a show versus a weekly episodic show, whereas the weekly episodic show, people can catch up and you can talk about it for that however many 6-8 weeks. Whereas like a Netflix show, you watch Stranger Things, it's like, oh, how are you watching Stranger Things? Oh, I'm only on episode whatever. I haven't watched it all yet. And you can't really get that discussion level because everyone's, the way they watch content is at different levels, right? So I do appreciate Disney has reawakened my love of episodic television, but yet I did not get on this hype train. I think that there's just so much stuff out there. It is hard to always be on top of the next thing. You know what I mean? I think it's easier with movies, and if you want to see a movie, you go see the movie. But especially with television and the amount of television shows out there and the quality of television shows out there, it's really hard to watch everything you want, which has always been a struggle. But now I feel like it's even more of a struggle. You got Succession, you got Billions, you got, all these like prestige shows, dramas that are really interesting and cool, and I just don't have the time for it. Again, I think the moral of this story is a moral I've talked about before. Don't have any kids because I don't have any free time. Sorry. It was getting too light and jovial. I feel like I had to darken it up a bit. Don't have kids. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I think too, like going back to the content situation, you don't just have movies and television like back in the day, or even books, right? Now you have books, podcasts, video games. You have like all sorts of audio podcasts, audio books. The amount of content that you have that is produced is just incredible. At no time in human history have we had this amount of culture and content being pushed out on a daily basis, and it's just like a constant flood. I think too, Tiger King is rare, right? Tiger King, which was, I'm sure you probably know what it was, but the fact that you know what it was, I think those moments are rare when the entire people, the entire society or culture gloms onto one particular thing and it becomes part of the zeitgeist, right? That I think was a perfect storm of nobody having anything to do on Netflix while the COVID was going on, and so everybody was watching Netflix. But I think those moments are rare. Right now I think maybe it's Euphoria, right? Everyone's talking about Euphoria, another show I haven't seen, but I probably don't want to see it because it's like, I don't know, it's like high school kids, I don't know. I used to be a lot more into, whoa, turn the phone off. I used to be a lot more into like teeny bopper shows, but I just can't do it anymore. I think because now I have kids, it's harder for me to watch like kids in high school doing blow and Molly and shit like that, because that's not too far from my kids, and it's not a window or world I want to get into anymore. But it's going back to content, I think the reason why I haven't had time for anything is I've been playing this game called Red Dead Redemption, right? And I've wanted to talk about this for a minute because it probably is, for my money, the best, most, there's so many things I want to say about it. It's just such a compelling game, the immersiveness, like, I play video games, a lot of games in my life, and I've liked a lot of games, like really passionately, but Red Dead is on a whole other level of storytelling and entertainment and content. Talking about content, when you're living the life of somebody and you're like literally like, So the game in and of itself, before I get too far off, is like a Cowboys and Indians game, basically. It takes place in the early 1900s, and times are changing, right? It's like now. Times are changing very quickly, and these men of the Old West, who are kind of outlaws, are watching the birth of like the real federalism and the United States coming together and being a real power. So these outlaws can't really exist as they used to. And there's one outlaw in particular who's like the right-hand man, and he's like the killer, the murderer, the bad guy. And you watch, and he's the guy with the redemption. You watch him slowly realize his mistakes and the things that he's done, and he wonders why he's doing these things. He's like, well, this is the life I had to live, but the world is changing, and the people around me don't have to live this life. And it's a growth story. Meanwhile, you're like killing all these people, and it's this, but there's also these like really quiet moments where you're like in the countryside, just riding your horse around, hunting, helping strangers. You're really, really immersing yourself in this character's life. And it's a spoiler alert. I know the game's been out for a while, but you develop tuberculosis in the game. Your character develops this life-threatening disease, and he goes to a doctor, and the doctor's like, well, yeah, you don't got much time left, right? You're gonna die. And you watch through the last like third of the game, this character that you are, grapple with himself and his thoughts and the choices he's made in his life, right? And it's very like, you're in there, man. You're feeling the things that this guy's feeling because you've done that. You were him. You've committed these murders, so to speak. You've done these heinous things, and now you realize, the fun's over, right? Their posse gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and the stakes get higher and higher and higher, and ultimately, he dies, he gets killed. And I had an incredible hard time finishing this game. I was so invested in Arthur Morgan and his life and this thing. I mean, it's not a short game. You watch a movie, and a movie's, at most 3 hours. This game, if you do all of it to completion, is like 120 hours. That's a lot of time that you're spending in this world with these people and these characters. And you really have, for me, I had a very like strong connection to all of them, and it's so lifelike. It's a simulation. It's not really like a video game in the sense that like, there's conversations and things, and time moves forward, and if you miss a thing, you missed a thing. There's an opportunity one of the most interesting parts, there's opportunities to go and hang out with people in your gang. And there was a guy that I didn't quite like, but he wanted to go fishing. He kept asking me to go fishing. I was like, screw it. I'll eventually get to it. And then the guy gets his head blown off, and you can't go fishing with him anymore. And you're just like, oh man, and like, you have these dialogues with this character and all this stuff. And then, he really, they have personalities in a way where you sympathize and you feel for them, like any character in any show. But when they die and you just don't have the opportunity to do it anymore, it's like, whoa, it's a very dense, deep game. And I just wanted to talk about how much I loved it. And if anybody is watching this that hasn't played it, that is like, man, I should play that game, you should. Or at least look up some stuff online. It's just a fascinating and beautiful game, and I cannot recommend it enough, and it's probably the reason why I haven't watched Boba Fett. So there. Yeah, I feel like I was really going on about that, but that's how passionate I am about this game. I assume people are flash forwarding. It'll say in the chapters Matt's Red Dead Redemption monologue, and hopefully you can just fast forward right to the next chapter, which will be about I don't know. I was doing really good with the cycling through the things I want to talk about, and now I got stuck. Okay, here you go. Speaking of zeitgeist and culture and all that shit, hilarious. Well, I say hilarious, but it cut a little deep for me. Last Saturday on SNL, they did a very funny skit with John Mulaney, who's a comedian I adore. I used to hate him for some reason, and then I actually listened, and he's hilarious. Anyhoozle, he did a great skit on podcasting, and it cut a little deep. I won't lie, it cut a little deep. But the idea is that like I said in the very first episode, another white guy with a podcast, another white guy with privilege in a podcast, just what the world needs. And it kind of takes that joke and really goes for it. And the idea is it's a toddler, a Fisher-Price podcasting set, right? And so he's sitting in his basement, and he's like, going at it, blah blah blah, and it's all because as a white man you're repressed and you can't speak your truth and blah 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 blah, and it's really all you want to talk about is racism, right? And how you're oppressed white guy and blah blah blah. But the joke is he's recording into nothing, right? He can say all these things and blah blah blah, and it's just. That being said, I was like, oh man, like, is that me? Am I that person? Am I just like, speaking out into the void? But I'm not. I don't think I am. I think I have a little bit more to say, hopefully, than that. I'm not really talking too much nonsense. I'm trying to talk about things that I like and that I know, right? And try to, connect a little bit with an audience. I'm not trying to, I don't know. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything other than playing Red Dead Redemption. You know what I mean? I don't think that this is podcast. I'm not trying to convince you to become less woke or more woke or whatever kind of oak you want to be. You know what I mean? I think I'm just, out here trying to make some people laugh and connect a little bit, right? So hopefully my heart is in the right place with this podcast and not in the place of some other white people with privilege in a podcast. You know what I'm saying? But we'll see. Hey, we'll see. As time goes on, this might get a little dicey. I just start, really going off the deep end and start talking about conspiracies and stuff like that, which didn't even read it in the card. But I think it's, well, I was debating. Okay, I was debating whether or not I wanted to go deep into this, Ukraine stuff, or whether or not I wanted to talk about it or not, because it is the story of the world right now, you know what I mean? So I feel like I would be silly for me not to talk about it. But again, I wanted to keep this not so dark, right? But I don't know. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is these conspiracies that are coming out of this conflict are just absolutely fascinating to me, because I love following conspiracies, right? Even if I think they're bullshit, right? Even if I think they're totally a crock. I'm still fascinated because there is a segment of the population that does believe this, whatever this conspiracy is. So one of the conspiracies I think that's going around right now is it ties into the whole the idea of what is it, the child trafficking, that really Putin is a hero because Ukraine is a hotbed for child trafficking, and it is the center for all of the world's woes, and that's the Great Reset is going to happen, or whatever they call it, the Great Reset. Of course, no, I'm just kidding. But anyways, more conspiracy nonsense. But the idea that like Putin is this hero, the secret hero, that he's really coming in, and the world media doesn't want us to know of the horrors and terrors that are going on in Ukraine, and that Putin is saving us from this diabolical machinations of these people. And I am just like, whoa, like, whoa, the tether of reality is just really slipping for some people, you know, like, you know, you could believe anything nowadays, I feel like. I mean, and I think it goes back to where you get and what content you put in yourself, right? Content, entertainment, all that stuff, I think it's like any food or anything you put into your body. It changes you. You digest it in certain ways. And I think it's really interesting to listen to how people feel about this situation right now. And it's like a cipher for however you're feeling. You know what I mean? You might be pro-Putin. Well, probably not pro-Putin, but you're like, oh, well, you know, NATO set this up and they basically forced his hand. Or you're on the other side that this guy's the next dictator. This is World War III and he's a despot. You know, it's like, again, whatever, you know, there's so many, it's like a prism, you know what I mean? Whatever you're feeling and however your leanings are, you can put this on the situation and it's there, you know? But anyways, I do support the people of Ukraine. I think that they deserve their own country. They deserve, you know, their own rights. I mean, they have a democracy, right? I am very pro-democracy. I am not pro-oligarch or authoritarian. I don't know if you could tell based on my previous conversations or, you know, but I don't know. It's an interesting situation. I don't know what to think about it other than I wish it wasn't happening. You know, I wish it wasn't happening. But it is, and, you know, we just have to, like, go through it and support. You know, I was thinking about donating money directly to, they have, like, a crypto defense fund, and you can give money directly to the defense fund of the people of Ukraine. And I was like, man, that'd be cool to give $100 or $200, whatever, to the people of Ukraine for them to buy ammunition and, like, fight this war. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just think and then the president, you know, he's just such a fascinating figure too. Comedian turned politician turned like war hero, you know, like this legendary path this guy's taking is like unbelievable. And I honestly hope he doesn't become a martyr, man. I would love it if he stuck around and like continued to build Ukraine. And I don't want anything bad to happen to this guy. Because he's huge. He could be an amazingly big figure moving forward. You know what? Speaking of amazingly big figures, to change the subject rapidly, I listen to. So I'm a big wrestling fan, and it's something I don't think I've really talked about too much on this pod. But I am a closeted wrestling fan. You know, you don't really see. I don't like wear wrestling merch. I don't like. You know, I'm not like singing it from the rooftops. But if somebody mentions wrestling and they want to talk, baby, let's talk. You know, I love it. I love it, right? Let's get down on it. Because wrestling to me is like this, man, it's like an art form. I know there's some people maybe that just chuckle at that, but it is absolutely an art form. It might not be an art form that you understand or you can't relate to, but like a lot of art, it has its own language. It has its own feelings and vibes and ups and downs and it's just an incredible, once you like get it, you get it and you're like, whoa, you know, but it's not for everybody, you know, but I think, you know, talking about modern mythology and that being like kind of the theme of the show, I think that wrestling is another extension of our desire for larger than life and mythological characters. I mean, is there anybody more mythological in the 80s than Hulk Hogan? I mean, like that guy was a living legend, a myth, you know, flipped Andre the Giant in WrestleMania 3, you know, like creating this like aura of legends, right? And that's something that, you know, you get only in like entertainment and stories, right? That's like the secret, right? The open secret that it's not real, right? Hulk Hogan is Terry Bollea, right? He's a real guy. He's just a regular guy who got in the right situation and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get too into Hulk Hogan because I don't think he's a great guy, but I'm just using him as a common example and as somebody that, you know, everyone's familiar with. The point that I'm getting is Vince McMahon had a great interview on Pat McAfee's show. And I don't really watch Pat McAfee, but if you got Vince McMahon on your show for a live interview, I am there because, you know, I've talked about billionaires before. I've talked a lot about billionaires in the Never Ending Be Humming. Check that show out if you haven't.
Thanks.
But my favorite billionaire is Vincent Kennedy McMahon. By far, he is my favorite billionaire. He is just a fascinating figure from where he came from to where he is now to like the highs, lows. I mean, you want to talk about, you know, I said what I say about Disney, knowing something is evil but loving it anyways. That's Vince McMahon. It's not that I think he's evil, but dude's covered up murders before, so he's not great, right? But like, he's still fascinating. He's still fascinating. I think that for the longevity of his career and of his status as like a mogul for this entertainment company, I mean, you really don't get any like bigger than that guy, right? He kept saying it, and I'm going to steal it. He's one of one, right? There is only one of him in the world. And this podcast was just so interesting to listen to somebody who's reached the height of his chosen and preferred field, right? I mean, he's literally turned this what was a wrestling federation into a global entertainment like mecca, right? It's just enormous. It's global, right? WrestleMania is going to be in like 30 days, and it's like WrestleMania. I can't even. He took off. They used to have Roman numerals, right? And he's obsessed with aging and all that stuff. So after WrestleMania 30 became XXX, he got rid of the numbering systems because he didn't want people to feel like WrestleMania was old. So it just became WrestleMania, and there was like a symbol. So now I don't know what WrestleMania it is. It's probably like WrestleMania 37 or something like that. I don't remember. But he was like obsessed with the idea he doesn't want it to be like old. So he doesn't want these numbers on it. Just the way he thinks about things and branding is just so fascinating to me. So yeah, it's a plug to watch that podcast after you're done watching this podcast. Watch that interview. It's just, like I said, the way he thinks about things. I want to emulate that. You know what I mean? He talks about how he doesn't think about negatives. He only tries to deal with positives. And just the way he presents himself. He's like, I'm me. This is it. I'm just myself. He's just fascinating. And people talk about, what three people or what person, if you could have dinner with any person you want in the whole world, people pick like Einstein and Gandhi, what president or something like that. I would probably choose Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Like, it would just be a wild conversation and a wild dinner with that guy. Because he would tell you things, and he's just so experienced, But not to say, okay, I know I'm stroking him pretty good. But again, he has his flaws. He's done horrible things. He has, fired wrestlers during the pandemic. He has, like I said, done some pretty questionable things, covering things up for people, all sorts of nefarious things. You know what I mean? You don't get to the top, being friends with everybody. Well, I hope so, because I want to get to the top and I want to be friends with everybody. But hopefully, that's the way it works. But like, he's had a long struggle and road. And actually, he going to Saudi Arabia, he went to Saudi Arabia, and I was very anti that. I was very opposed to that. Not that I'm opposed to Saudi Arabia. I got a lot of feelings about it. But somebody made a great point, and it was along the lines of like, bringing American culture and Western culture to Saudi Arabia, incepting them with their culture. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, that's actually a really great take. Like, of course he's making money off of the blood of people and all that stuff. But he is also, in a way, bringing an incredibly different view of things to Saudi Arabia. And it sells out every time it's there. The Prince's, whatever you call it, Prince's Royal Gardens, where it's shot, fills up every time. So there's obviously a passion for it. And I think I'm curious to see the long-term effects of it. If it does open people's eyes up, and they start becoming a little bit more, for lack of a better word, liberal or progressive. I'm not like thinking it's going to be tomorrow or anything. I just think it was an interesting take, and it opened up my eyes a little bit. And I hope that I continue to open up my eyes about things. Anyways, my cat's here to probably tell me we should wrap this up. And harass James for pets, but that's about it, man. This has been a long one. I got 28 minutes. I didn't even realize I talked for that long, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I hope it was a little less dark, and I hope you come back for episode 4. So catch y'all down the road, folks. Thanks so much.